You are standing on a frozen hill in the mountains of North Korea. The wind howls, carrying the sting of a Siberian blizzard. The temperature has plummeted to 30 degrees below zero. Your canteen is a solid block of ice. Your fingers are numb, and the oil inside your M1 rifle has frozen solid, turning your weapon into a heavy club. Below you, the black, frozen waters of the Chosin Reservoir stretch out like a sheet of steel. From the dark ridges around you, the sound of a brass bugle echoes through the night. Then, green flares light up the sky. 10,000 Chinese soldiers are charging across the snow, screaming and blowing whistles. You are a United States Marine, and you are surrounded. How did a campaign that was supposed to end the war by Christmas turn into the most desperate survival battle in your nation's history? For 5 months, the Korean War has raged across the peninsula. What began in June 1950 with a surprise North Korean invasion has turned into a rapid counteroffensive. General Douglas MacArthur has pushed the North Korean army back across the 38th parallel. This parallel is the political boundary dividing North and South Korea. MacArthur's forces have advanced all the way to the border of China, along the Yalu River. The promise from the High Command is clear. The war is almost over, and you will be home by Christmas. But as the 1st Marine Division, led by Major General Oliver P. Smith, marches north into the rugged Taebaek Mountains, the terrain changes. The roads turn into single-lane dirt tracks winding along steep cliffs, and the temperature begins to drop. Have you ever felt a cold so deep it hurts to breathe? Major General Smith is worried. Unlike MacArthur, who believes China will not intervene, Smith senses a trap. He moves slowly, establishing supply depots and building an airfield at Hagaru-ri. Hagaru-ri is a small town at the southern tip of the reservoir. Declassified intelligence reports from the time show that Smith repeatedly questioned the wisdom of stretching his lines so thin. His caution will soon save thousands of lives. On November 27th, the trap snaps shut. The Chinese People's Volunteer Army, under the command of General Song Shi-lun, has secretly marched over 100,000 troops into the mountains. They have marched under the cover of night, slipping past American aerial reconnaissance. And now, they strike. What happens when your enemy is invisible until they are already in your trench? The attack is massive and simultaneous. The 1st Marine Division and elements of the U.S. Army's 7th Infantry Division are stretched out along a 30-mile mountain road. In a single night, the Chinese People's Volunteer Army cuts this road into isolated pockets. Marines at Udam-ni, Army troops at Sinhung-ni, and the base at Hagaru-ri are suddenly surrounded. They are outnumbered 5-1. The battle is no longer about winning the war. It is about survival. The Chinese forces do not use heavy tanks or planes. Instead, they rely on mass infantry infiltration, attacking at night and hiding in the mountains by day. Your squad is cut off from help. Your radio signals fade in the mountain passes. How do you hold a perimeter when the enemy is attacking from all 360 degrees? The first enemy you fight is the cold. At 30 below zero, metal sticks to bare skin, tearing it away. Wounded men cannot lie on the frozen ground. They will freeze to death in minutes. Medics carry morphine syrettes in their mouths to keep them from freezing. Blood plasma is useless because it turns to ice. Sweat is deadly. If you sweat while marching, the moisture freezes when you stop, causing hypothermia. Hypothermia is a dangerous drop in body temperature that leads to confusion and death. Frostbite becomes as dangerous as enemy bullets, blackening toes and fingers, claiming thousands of casualties. Your weapons fail you. The grease inside the M1 Garand rifles and Browning machine guns freezes, causing them to jam. Men learn to strip the oil completely from their weapons, running them dry. Jeep engines must be kept running constantly, or their coolant will freeze and crack the engine blocks. Even rations are impossible to eat. Cans of beans and meat are frozen solid. What do you eat when your food is hard as concrete? The only food you can eat without cooking are chocolate caramels, specifically Tootsie Rolls. The Marines discover that if they chew them warm, the sticky candy can also be used to plug bullet holes in radiator lines and fuel pipes. The frozen candy solidifies instantly in the cold air, sealing the leaks. It is a bizarre survival tactic born of absolute desperation. The supply crews back in Japan had misread the code name for ammunition, which was Tootsie Rolls, and dropped crates of actual candy instead. But this mistake saved the division's vehicles. How does a logistical error become a lifeline in the middle of a war zone? On the east side of the reservoir, a force of 3,000 soldiers from the 7th Infantry Division faces the brunt of the Chinese onslaught. This force is known as Task Force Faith, Cut off from rescue and under constant assault, they hold their lines for 5 days in the freezing wilderness. Their commander, Lieutenant Colonel Don Faith, is mortally wounded while leading a charge against a roadblock. According to the declassified military records of the Regimental Combat Team 31, their ammunition ran out under sub-zero temperatures. The survivors attempt a desperate breakout in trucks. Only a few hundred managed to reach Marine lines at Hagaru-ri, the rest killed or captured in the freezing darkness. The loss of Task Force Faith is a reminder of what happens when units are isolated without support. How many men must die before a commander realizes the line cannot hold? At Hagaru-ri, General Smith gathers his forces. Surrounded by enemy divisions, a reporter asks him if he is retreating. Smith's reply becomes legendary. "Retreat? Hell, we're just attacking in another direction." The Marines do not intend to surrender. They plan to fight their way out, bringing their wounded, their equipment, and their dead with them. In the book Breakout by historian Martin Russ, veterans recalled the grim determination of that march. To survive, they must turn the single, narrow dirt road through Funchilin Pass into an escape route. The march is a gauntlet of fire and ice. The columns of trucks and infantry move at a crawl, constantly attacked from the ridges above. Every hill must be taken by infantry climbing up icy slopes to clear out Chinese machine gun nests. Why did the Marines refuse to leave their dead behind in the snow? The greatest obstacle lies at Funchilin Pass. Here, a concrete bridge over a deep gorge has been blown up by the Chinese. Without this bridge, the heavy trucks, tanks, and thousands of men are trapped. There is a chasm in front of them and the enemy behind. In a daring engineering feat, the U.S. Air Force drops 8 massive 2-ton prefabricated bridge sections by C-119 flying boxcars. C-119s are large twin-engine transport planes. Using giant parachutes, the steel sections drift down into the gorge. Marine engineers assemble the bridge under fire, spanning the gorge and reopening the road to the sea. This bridge drop is the first of its kind in military history. It allows the columns to escape the trap. What would have happened if those parachutes had drifted off target in the wind? By mid-December, the columns reach the port city of Hungnam. A massive fleet of over 100 U.S. Navy ships waits in the harbor. In what becomes known as the Hungnam Evacuation, the Navy rescues over 100,000 soldiers and military vehicles. But they do not leave the locals behind. Sensing the impending retribution from the advancing communist forces, the ships load 100,000 North Korean civilians. On the merchant ship Meredith Victory, designed for 12 passengers, 14,000 refugees are packed into the cargo holds. They arrive safely in the south, with 0 lives lost. 5 babies are born during the 3-day journey. The captain, Leonard LaRue, later became a Benedictine monk. He called the rescue a miracle. How do you measure the success of a battle? By the lives you saved, rather than the enemies you killed. The Battle of Chosin Reservoir is a tactical victory for the Chinese, who succeeded in driving UN forces out of North Korea. But it is a legendary moral victory for the U.S. Marines, who preserved their divisions and inflicted devastating casualties. The Chinese People's Volunteer Army 9th Army suffered over 40,000 casualties. Half of those casualties were from the extreme cold, putting them out of action for months. Today, the Chosin Reservoir is a quiet place in the closed nation of North Korea, but the memory of the battle lives on. It redefined the Cold War, demonstrating that the conflict would be long, bloody, and fought in the most extreme conditions. For the veterans, the bond forged in the freezing mountain pass remains unbroken. You stood on that frozen hill. You heard the bugles. You felt the cold stone and the bite of the wind. And you learned that when everything freezes, the only thing that keeps you warm is the brother standing next to you. But now you understand that you were never truly standing on a frozen hill in the mountains of North Korea.